at configuring templates and email engine roles module 5. Once you complete this module, you would be able to create templates for incident, change and release management. You will also be creating task templates and task group templates, configure the task phase management, and also configure the email role engine. So let's get started with lesson 1, configuring application templates. In order to create templates for each application, we have to go to that particular section of that application in the custom configuration. So for example, if you have to create a template for incident management, you will be going to the incident management option. If it's a template for change management, you will go for the change management option. Let's understand what a template is. A template is a predefined process that provides default settings for the users, the support users or the help desk users on various forms. You can create templates for your users to create a change, to create a release, or to create an incident, as well as task and activity request. For example, in this, we see that the template name is password reset for DocBack software. Categorization tier 1 has been described as software. It is enabled and rest of the fields are also filled up. Whatever data you see in these fields will get populated when you use this incident template for an incident ticket. So the whole objective of configuring these templates is to ensure consistent and accurate documentation and also to save time when you have repetitive issues, repetitive ticket creation. So by using the template, the record is going to be entered in the system more quickly and then can be assigned and processed. The values used to create the templates are going to be used to populate the fields on the form. The template values automatically will get populated on a new incident, change, or a release with the information that we add over here. Templates are pretty useful when you have to quickly log a ticket and also useful when you have to create tickets for repetitive calls and repetitive issues. So for example, password is one of the most common calls to the help desk. So if you create a template for a common password reset, you don't have to really type in all the field values. Once these values are entered over here and it auto-populates the fields in the incident management for an incident template, you could still go ahead and modify those. So these templates are often used for pre-approved changes that follow well-defined methods including routine installation, moves, adds, and changes. In order to configure templates, for incident management, you need the incident config permission. For a change template, you have to have the infrastructure change config, infrastructure change master. Similarly, you need to have the config permission for majority of the templates that you want to create. So if you have to configure activity templates for any support group, you would need the activity config. If you want to define or configure release templates for your group only, then you need release master permissions with support group, release, coordinator, functional role. If you want to create templates for any support group, then you would need release config. For more, you can always visit the documentation for all the other permissions that are needed to manage the ITSM and its various applications. So the following tabs are going to be common to incident, problem, change, and release management templates. Classification, where you define the company, the summary of the template, the status. Categorization will be used for defining the operational and the product categorizations. Assignment will be used to define who the ticket is going to be assigned to once the template data is populated into the ticket fields. Relationship for defining the relationship of various CIs. An authored for groups tab specifies which support groups can modify the template and organization and support group that can use the template. Let's take an example of incident template. So the name of the template is password reset for DocBack software. So any call that goes to the help desk for an incident ticket, then this can be used to auto-populate all the fields in incident management. It really will reduce the time to complete the ticket or submit the ticket. And quickly, it can be assigned to the assignees. They can start working on it quickly. So in this classification tab, like we saw earlier, we have the summary, notes, reported source, incident type, which service is impacted, which is the CI which is impacted, and if the service desk is resetting the password and resolving it, the incident ticket also will get a status of resolved, the reason, impact, urgency, priority, and weightage. In the categorization tab, you enter all the product categorization. In fact, if you enter the service CI field in the classification, that will auto-populate the product categorization. Then you have operational categorization, and you have automatic relationship of customers CI, who the ticket is going to be assigned to. Now, this is something which the support staff is going to solve it for the customer on the call itself. Hence, we do not hard code the assignee group, because it could be any support staff who will be resolving the incident. Hence, the ticket should be assigned to them. If we define the support company organization group and assignee, then it will always go to this group even if the call is been made to some other user. Hence, we choose the option called assign to current user. This means assign to the person who is creating this particular incident and closing and resolving this incident. So assign to current user will always assign it to the person who is submitting or creating the ticket. You can also choose the vendor assignment as well. The relationship tab is used for defining the relationship information. So it could be relating individual CIs to the template. If the ticket is being resolved, then how did you resolve it? What is the method being used? What was the cause? What is the resolution categorization, and the resolution product categorization also can be filled up. So all of this, when it gets populated in the incident management form, it covers up almost all the fields. The support staff user who is creating the ticket and submitting the ticket only has to manage with a field or two. The next tab is authored for groups. The authored for group, as it defines here, is to specify which groups can modify the template and which all groups in an organization can use the template. So here if you see, it says specifies the group that has the ability to modify this template. It is possible to assign the template author to any group where you have the functional role of support group admin. If you have the permission of incident config, then it is possible to assign the template author to any group. So first you choose the company organization group and save it. And then if you want to define that every support group in the company can use this, just click on update and just define the company name. Once you define the company name, it would mean that all support groups from all the organizations would be able to use that. So once the ticket template is created, this incident ticket template, if you want to test it, so you create an incident, choose the customer name and type the template. So let's say, for example, in this case, it's email issue. Immediately, once you choose this, the summary, the description, the impact, the status, the urgency, and the rest of the fields will get auto populated. Likewise, we have the change management template. Almost same template name, template category, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. If you are going to use a custom approval process flow, then you can choose the custom approval process flow. You can fill up the rest of the tabs with the information that is required for a change management ticket. And when you go to the change ticket and use this template called installation of a software updater, you will be able to see all the fields getting pre-populated with information that you would have entered in all of these tabs, as well as the standard process or the change custom change process flow being called or executed. So whatever custom change process flow or standard process flow is associated with the template, that is going to get executed, which will determine the life cycle of the change and the approval process of the change. We also have a release template. Release template also has the classification, the categorization, the assignment, relationship, author for groups. However, there is an extra tab here called the manifest. Manifest lists out the activities that are going to be used for the release template. You can also associate a change template to a release template. So release template can have activity templates or it can have change templates. So once a release template is created and saved, after that you will be able to add activity templates as well as change templates. For example, activity template update product documentation will be executed during the milestone. Which milestone? Planning milestone. Similarly, activity template called product license keys will be activated during the planning milestone. And then we have a change template which will be activated during the deployment milestone. So whenever you are adding an activity template or a change template, you have to choose the milestone during which you want to execute them. And when you create a release and when you choose the template, you should be able to see all of those fields getting populated, as well as during each milestone, each of these activities or the change templates getting activated and executed as well. So all in all, the templates such as the incident template, the change template, the release template are being used by the support group in order to submit the tickets quickly, much more efficiently, and it also reduces the time and effort to log those tickets. This brings us to the end of lesson 1. We will now look at lesson 2, overview of task management system. So a task is the smallest unit of work that must be performed to resolve an incident or a problem investigation or a change request or activity. Task facilitates the timely and accurate resolution of requests that contains various steps. Collection of tasks is referred as a task group. So some task groups require the task to be sequenced so that they are performed in a specific order. Task templates and task group templates can be thought as of container objects holding the definition of tasks or groups of tasks that when executed becomes actual tasks and task groups. As an administrator, you can create different types of task templates. One would be manual, in which an action is performed by a person manually, or it could be automatic, in which there is a predefined instruction which is going to automatically get executed by the task. Tasks can be carried out sequentially, or it could be simultaneously in a linear fashion or in parallel. So the flow is how the associated task groups, templates and task templates relate to one another in terms of the sequence in which task groups and tasks are generated at runtime. So in this example, we have task template A, task template B and task template C. Task template A and task template B are in sequence, or task template A and task template C are in sequence. However, task template B and task template C are in parallel. So when a task template is embedded into task group templates, the associations are created between them, and flow template record track the sequence, and variable templates can be defined to make data available at runtime. Flow is how the associated task group templates and the task templates relate to one another in terms of the sequence in which task groups and tasks are generated at runtime. There are variable templates which are also defined so that at runtime variable data is available for the tasks to employ. Each variable template has the option to be either global or associated with a specific company. In order to create task templates or task group templates, you would need permissions.
The video will open in a new window.
Permissions. So if you have the task administrator permissions, it will allow you to create task templates, configure assignment process of tasks, integration, configuration. You will be able to create, update and relate all task and task groups. If you have task application config, it will allow you to do task management system integration configuration. Task process config allows you to create only the task management templates. Assignment process configuration. You would also need the ASE administrator permission. Task manager will create, relate and update all task and task group regardless of assignments. You will be able to work with incidents, problem, activity and change tasks. Task user will be able to access and modify assigned and related tasks. Assigned tasks which are assigned to their respective support groups only. In order to relate tasks to a request, you have to open the incident or the problem or the change or the activity in order to associate the task. Tasks are like the subsystem which are associated with the main system, such as the incident, the problem, the change. So whenever you open a ticket, in the ticket you can associate the tasks. It could be single task or it could be task group. And then you can choose the activity. Is it manual or automatic? So in order to get these tasks or task groups here, the task template needs to be configured like we discussed in the previous slides. So as a task implementer, you will be able to view and choose from the children of task groups and select the task in the task group. This capability to reuse task and task group templates saves a lot of time and provides consistent procedures for the timely and successful implementation of standard changes. In order to access the task management system functionality, we have to open the incident, the problem, the change, or the activity, and then go to the task tab and associate. So for example, in this, the task tab is related to the incident form. So you are choosing either a single task or you can choose a task group and then choose the tasks from here, which shows you the summary, the name, the support group it will be assigned to, and the priority. There is no limit to the number of tasks that can be created for a particular request. Tasks for the same request can be assigned to different assignees. And the status of all tasks must be closed before an incident, problem, or change can be closed. However, it still can be configured as per your requirements. In order to configure the assignment of task, you have to open the configure assignment form. Over here in this form, you define even your incident assignment, change assignment, and all the different types of assignments, including the task assignment process. So you choose event as should be task assignee, and then you define which group it's going to go to. And then you can choose the process, whether it's going to be round robin or capacity or number for individual assignment. The rest of the other categorizations can also be filled up. So the configure assignment is the same form where you would be configuring the assignment process for incident, problem, change, and many more. So we change the event's name here. For the task, it is going to be task assignee. And then we give the other rule settings or the other settings as to what process it's going to be for individual assignment. This brings us to the end of lesson 2. Let's look at lesson 3, working with task templates. So task template can be of two types, manual or automatic. Earlier, we have already discussed what a task is, which is a smaller unit of work, which we have already discussed what a task is, which is a smaller unit of work, which is going to carry out a single step in handling a particular change. At runtime, task templates are generated as tasks. So in the manual type of a task template, there has to be a person to take care of the action. They have to perform the task manually, whichever they have been assigned to. And in automatic task template, the task is going to be performed on an automatic action. For example, it could be polling a specific field on the TMS sample approval form to see if approval has been obtained. To use this option, you must specify an automatic command on the automatic tab. So here we see there are two types of task templates, manual and automatic. And in this course, we will be focusing on the manual task template. So how do we configure a task template? We go to the task template form, give the name of the template, the summary, the categorization tier 1. In the general tab, we choose the company, the region, the site group, the site, what is the type of the task template, status, priority, and then we also have various other tabs which are the classification, assignment, input, output, completion, financials, usage, and system. Here, some of these tabs are different from the templates that we saw for incident or change or even release. Now in the command section, we have launch command and details command. Both the launch and the details command fields on this tab are features that on the runtime task form will require manual intervention to drive them. In both the cases, the user must click a button that appears below these fields. Only manual task template should have launch command. Automatic task template uses a details command. Some best practice commands are provided for use when task management system is being used with the BMC configuration management for client application. There are additional commands that can be defined for any other third-party application. An application of a launch command is like tms underscore out underscore cms underscore deployment, which is used with the BMC configuration management deployment task template. In the classification tab, we have the operational categorization, the product categorization. In the assignment, we define who the task is going to be assigned to. If the task is as a template being used, then you don't need to define it in the task configuration or the task assignment. You can define it over here, and the task will be assigned to the assignee group database administration. It will also notify the assignee. The name of the assignee is optional, because if you define the name of the assignee here, then every single task template will be assigned to the assignee defined over here. So if you want to associate this particular task template, let's say with a change template, so you define the change template in the change template form. Example, in this, the name of the change template is installation of a software updater. Tier 1 is change template, tier 2 is software, and you go to the task template tab and choose either a task template or a task group. Choose task template and then define which task template would be associated with change template. This type of feature especially is very useful for standard changes with multiple tasks. Now, if you have task phase management and task validation enabled for this particular company, be it any company, any business company that you have defined earlier, then the phase field will appear above the related templates table. And you can define which task will be executed during which phase. The usage tab in the task template helps us to track whether the task template is being used by other task group templates, parent templates, or request template. This tab is going to appear only after you have saved the task template. So it will show you how many times it has been used, how many have been closed successfully, how many times it has been cancelled, and the last usage date and timestamp. If you want to configure task group template where you have sequencing or the type of sequencing, then you have to go to the task group form, define the name, server application upgrade, summary for which company you're defining it, and the template category tier 1. A task group template is like a container for the task templates in which we are associating various task templates such as backup database, upgrade platform, upgrade application. The first task is going to be backup database as per the sequence defined here. Upgrade platform is the second, upgrade application is the third in the sequence. You can choose all of these tasks and associate it with the task group template. We then define the status of the task group template, which is active, priority, and visible. What this does is that whenever you are associating multiple tasks to a particular application, you do not have to choose single task and associate it with the template. For example, in this place where we have just defined task template 1, imagine if we had to define 5 task templates which are always going to be used by installation or with this particular change template. So instead of selecting 5 different templates, you create a task group template, put the tasks within the group template, and associate the task group template with the change template or any other application template. It lets us efficiently associate multiple tasks through a group or a task group template to the main template. So here we have done sequencing. You also have standard. And in the standard type of task group template, it uses a flow mechanism to establish how the tasks are going to relate to each other and behave at run time. So you can define an advanced task group template where you can establish how the associated task group template and the task templates relate to one another. That's what is called as the flow. The flow will determine the sequence in which the task group templates and the task templates are going to be generated at runtime. If the task group template contains other task group templates, these likely already have flow established between the task group templates or task templates that they contain. A task group template's flow consists of one or more flow relationship records, and each flow relationship record consists of a task group or task template called the predecessor, which is linked to another task group or task template called the successor. This is where you define the flow from the task group or task to the task group or task. And here is where you define the flow relationship. So this brings us to the end of lesson 3, in which we understood task and task group templates. Let's look at lesson 4, configuring task phase management. Task phase management allows users to complete tasks during any phase of a change request. It could be the review or it could be any other phase, or it could be in the implementation phase, it could be task phase management. Task phase management allows users to complete tasks during any phase of a change request. It could be the review or it could be any other phase, or it could be in the implementation phase. It could be multiple tasks in one phase, one task in one phase, depends on how you configure. So task validation is going to specify the tasks activated for a particular phase and ensures that it must be closed before the change can move to the next phase. So we need to go to the change configuration rules form, and in the general tab rule settings, we will ensure that enable task phase management is set to yes, and then enforce task closure at each phase also is set to yes if you want to follow this particular concept. Selecting yes ensure the phase management is enabled, and selecting yes here enables the task validation. So a task has to be closed before the change moves on to the next phase. This enforcement rule, however, does not apply for inactive tasks. When a task is created, it is going to be assigned a sequence number that can be updated manually at a later stage. If the task phase management is not enabled, then the tasks are activated according to their sequence in the scheduled status of the change request. Even if phase management is disabled in the change rules, task phases are enabled for a change that was created using a change template that enabled phases. So once you configure this here, then we are going to go to the phase management configuration, which will allow us to complete tasks during any phase of a change request. For example, review rather than only in the implementation phase. So application name, task management system, form, template form, for which company, phase, review phase of task, sort order 1, activation status is new is what it says. So there are several phases which are out of the box. Review phase of task, business approval phase of task, and implementation phase of task. The review phase of tasks are activated when the change status is request for authorization. Business approval phase of task is activated when the change status is request for change, and this particular phase will correspond to the review and authorize stage of a change request. The implementation phase of task is activated when the change status is in implementation in progress, and the particular phase corresponds to the implementation stage of a change request, which you will find here. So once the phase management is enabled or the task phase is enabled, you will get to see that in the change request form. So on the change request form task tab, if the phase management has been enabled, the phase code would appear like this. Now, if the phase field appears, you cannot relate a task to a change request unless you specify the phase in which the tasks are going to be executed. To use the phase field, first you have to select the phase and then you relate a task template or a task group template to this particular change request. After you have selected a phase and related the tasks, the task and the task group table will show only task and task groups included with that phase. Example, for business approval, it will show only those task or task groups. For implementation, it will show those task or task groups associated with the implementation phase. We can also relate task or task group templates to change templates directly by going to the task template tab of the change management template and then defining this. So here we see that the task group server application upgrade and its 3 child tasks in the order of the sequence that we selected in the previous slide. So this is the task tab in which we have associated a task group and it shows the different tasks associated with it, which we had defined over here. Task group and the 3 tasks like this. So this brings us to the end of lesson 4, in which we understood the task phase management and how do we configure the task associated with the task phases. Let's look at configuring the email engine in lesson 5. So we can give users the ability to create or update requests using email. Therefore, when a user sends an email to the help desk complaining about an issue, then it's going to create a new request. Or if they are adding more information to an existing email, then it will update the work information to the existing incident request or to a problem investigation, to a known error, to a change request, work order, or a task. So once the email is sent, the email is going to be received and processed by the BMC Helix email rule engine based on the rules you would have defined, and then the ITSM records would be created or updated depending on the rule that gets executed based on the various configurations. So in order to configure email rule engine, email rule config permission is necessary. It is a foundation related permission. Let's take an example of this. So you are going to send it to the IT help desk. Therefore, the email inbox which is going to receive the incoming email needs to be configured, and that's the one which needs to be typed here by the users of the organization. And then you can define various rules for the subject line. So you can configure the email rule engine process using the subject line. You can configure the excluded subject list. You can configure the email rule engine use cases. You can enable the email rule engine, and then this is going to be analyzed by the email rule engine, and a new ticket is going to be created or an existing ticket is going to be updated. For the user who is sending the email, there are a couple of conditions that needs to be satisfied. The user's people record is configured with their email address and a login ID. The user's email address is configured as a trusted address and a recipient is associated with it. There are two steps involved in configuring the BMC Helix email rule engine. We have to first configure the email inbox that your system will use to receive incoming mail, which is this one. And you have to configure the email rule engine process, which will define the required keywords from the subject line that the users must enter in the email subject line to create the tickets or update the tickets. Let's see how to configure the email rule engine. So it consists of these three steps: configure the excluded subject list, configure the email rule engine use case, and enable the email rule engine. So you go to the application administration console, custom configuration tab, foundation, email rule engines, configure rules. This is where you will be defining the rules to configure the excluded subject, configure the email rule engine use cases, and then there are others like trusted recipient, trusted email address, and trusted domain. The excluded subjects are words or phrases that, if they appear in the subject line of an incoming email message, will cause the email rule engine to reject the message rather than sending it on for processing. For example, there is a word called undeliverable, and it is in the out of the box excluded subject list. Therefore, the email engine will reject any incoming message that contains that particular phrase. The global excluded subject list includes most commonly encountered strings seen in the subject line of returned or undeliverable email. To add additional excluded subjects, BMC recommends that you create company-specific excluded subject entries. So you choose this company here and then select excluded subject categories. In order to create company-specific excluded subject, you choose the company, excluded subject, then click on the plus sign, and then you define the names or the phrases and then submit. So first the company, then the base configuration, then exclude subject, and then this green plus sign. Ensure that the status is active, and this should get auto-populated because you would have selected excluded subject list, and name keyword is FW, which is a forward, for example. So here you are going to type the text that you want to exclude. In the sort order field, you need to type a number that is going to be corresponding to the order in which you want the email rule engine to evaluate this excluded subject. A subject with sort order set to 1 is evaluated before a subject with sort order set to 3 or 4 or 5, for example. And then you can click on submit. The newly created excluded subject will appear in the table on the left here on this side of the inbound email rule configuration form. You will repeat the procedure for each subject that you want to exclude. There are several out-of-the-box email use cases. Base configuration, here is where we have use case, click on the plus sign, and we see that there is a qualification for a change request wherein it is going to update the change request with a work log. When will this update happen? When the subject line contains keywords like RE and the subject line keywords contain %CRQ, which means a change request number. The action is to update the change request. Similarly, to create, there should be different qualification and the action name should be create. Also, the system uses broadly defined generic default use cases when an email message does not match any of that we define here. You will not be able to modify, rather we cannot modify the default use cases or add the default set. The basic type of use cases are always going to be create and update. So we are going to tell the email rule engine to create an incident request or a change request that uses a specified request template based on the content of the subject line. Or it could be to update an request, which could be an incident, which could be a change with work information notes. Let's look at an email rule engine use case. So we choose the company, then we go to the base configuration, use case, and then click on plus sign. Here we are saying status is active, name is access, and it is going to be applied to a form incident, which means it is going to be for incident management, and we submit. Once this is done, we go to the rule configuration. We choose the use case that we defined called access for the incident. Then we define the field name that subject line, if it starts with locked user ID. So if when you do this, the qualification gets auto created. So when the subject line starts with locked user ID as the qualification, what is going to be the action? It is going to be for creating an incident. So request form is incident, notify the sender on success, and it will also use a template, an incident template called locked user ID, so that all the fields from this template is going to auto-populate when the incident is created. Just creating the incident and saving the incident will not work because there are many mandatory fields. So the fields then will move or will be copied from this template that we select over here, and it will be auto-populated in the incident management field, and only then the incident will be successfully created. Once this is done, we could test that directly from this inbound email rule engine configuration. So we go to the developer field, we choose either the global company or the company on which the rules have been defined, to the subject line from body. So to will be the email address to whom you are going to send an email, from the user who has logged in or any other user. Subject line, let's say locked user ID, or maybe printer 3 needs toner, the body. Once we click on send test message, we wait for that to be processed. It should show the status as finished, from, and the to username as we defined over here. Once this is successfully finished, we will go here and we should be able to see the incident created or the work log added. When you click on this, it is going to open the incident and it is going to show you the work log. Or if it's just a create option, then it will go and show you the incident. It will open the incident and you will be able to see all the data pre-populated using the template, as well as whatever subject line and the body content that you had added. So this brings us to the end of lesson 5, in which we saw how to configure the email rule engine, the use cases using the subject line, and various other properties.